Hey, honey,
Yes, Barry?
let's get out of here.
Where are we going?
Where do we always go?
Fascina el viento, este ritmo de palmas, sin mi naturaleza, hasta encontrar la playa. Por eso grito al mundo, yo soy de Puerto Vallarta. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta.
Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. I am your host, Larry Kessler, and I'm just so happy to be introducing you to my favorite vacation destination in the entire world. Maybe it's even yours, and it's Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. That music you're listening to is performed by Alberto Perez, and Alberto is the owner of the Lapa Lapa group of restaurants. Those are the Lapa Lapa, the El Dorado restaurant, and at night for dinner, the El Dorado transforms into the ever-so-romantic Vista Grill with those dramatic views of the Los Muertos Pier all lit up at night in beautiful colors. Of course, at Lapa Lapa, you can enjoy that same view of the Los Muertos Pier all day long. Well, except during the day when it's not lit up, but all day long for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, seated with your toes in the sand, right at the water's edge. It's so romantic. It's just so Puerto Vallarta, my friends. Today we're going to be talking with two great guests. They're listeners Reggie and Donna Ballou from Tennessee. But before we get to them, let's see what's happening in Puerto Vallarta this week, the 26th of September, 2017. Now, last Tuesday morning, as I was recording the very last episode of the podcast of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show, Mexico was hit with its second major earthquake in 12 days. An earthquake with a magnitude estimated to be 7.1 hit approximately 55 kilometers or 34 miles south of the city of Puebla. It caused major damage in the Mexican states of Puebla, Morelos, and the greater Mexico City area, including the collapse of more than 40 buildings, you guys. And although Mexico's earthquake warning system provided 20 seconds advance warning in Mexico City, there were 350 people that have been reported killed so far, 273 of whom were in Mexico City and the surrounding areas, and more than 4,600 were injured. Rescue missions are still underway as I speak right now. And as I said, there had been an even larger earthquake 400 miles away off the coast of the state of Chiapas. That was 12 days earlier. So even though Puerto Vallarta didn't feel either of those shakes, these earthquakes are devastating for Mexico. Earthquakes happen so fast, and they're just so notorious, not only for death and injuries and just the fear that they strike in people, but also for making people homeless and jobless and destroying homes and businesses, you know. I got to tell you, there's a lot of people in Mexico right now who need our help. And there's quite a few businesses in Puerto Vallarta who have teamed up to raise funds for earthquake relief. I know that Monzon Brewery, actually I'm going to be interviewing the owners of Monzon. They had a fundraiser. Encanto, the theater, had a fundraiser. They're having a show and a silent auction to benefit the earthquake victims in Mexico over at Act 2 on October 1st. They're going to have a show and a silent auction. And so if you're in town, you need to check that out. There's going to be lots of great items being auctioned off, as well as some great entertainment there. And I'll even have a silent auction item there. They're going to be auctioning off an opportunity to have your very own podcast episode dedicated to, an individual or We're a business in Puerto Vallarta, so if you're interested in having your own episode on the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show, just be the highest bidder. And if you're in town, you can do that, or just call in. Anyway, if you are in town, you need to go to this event. And it's just so great, really, to see the people in Puerto Vallarta stepping up for a great cause. And just remember, though, if you do choose to give to the Mexican earthquake relief effort, be careful who you donate to and who you donate through, okay? Do your homework and just know that it's not always the big names in charities that do the best work for the lowest overhead. So talk to friends and check these charities out on the interwebs, okay? This is a good time to do that. Now, we all know that timing is everything. And if you listen to last week's podcast, actually while this earthquake was happening, I announced a very special project that I got to tell you, got me and many of you guys really excited. I've been hearing from all of you, and you're as excited about it as I am. And it's Tile Park, or Parque de los Azulejos, where they're going to be tiling Lázaro Cárdenas Park. And the project is being done by the same person who did the tile wall on the south side and in the marina and elsewhere in Puerto Vallarta. You'll see her work, and that's Natasha Moraga. Well, last week I announced to you that you could donate to her project, and I gave you instructions on how you could purchase commemorative tiles to be installed in Lázaro Cárdenas Park, and then the money from those purchases would go to help fund the project. Remember that, right? Well, of course you do. How could you forget? Anyway, I even built a donate page on the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show website for that effort. So anyway, this earthquake hits, right? And just as the project is just getting their fundraising effort started, this is what happened. So, timing is everything, as I said. And Natasha and her people, they were planning on quite a few fundraising events for their project, but they're also keenly aware of the great need for money to help rebuild and uplift so many that were affected by the terrible earthquakes here in Mexico. And as I just said, there are numerous events being planned for earthquake relief right here in Vallarta. So Natasha asked me to let you know that many of their planned fundraising events will probably wait until after the first of the year, just so that efforts to help with earthquake relief can proceed in earnest. Now, I understand her sentiments, okay? I understand it completely, but I just don't want her project to get lost in the shuffle, you guys. I don't want to sound too insensitive here. I think that we can think of giving to both the Tile Park project and to the earthquake relief project too, right? So I'm going to keep pushing and promoting this project, this El Parque de los Azulejos, and I just want to make sure that everybody remembers, because listen, they're not self-funded. They need the money from tile sales. They're going to be selling personalized tiles, and that way they can move the project forward and get the funds that they need to build what they can build and just make this beautiful tile park in Lázaro Cárdenas Park. So Nat has promised to sit with me for an interview pretty soon, and I'll get that to you just as soon as we sit down and talk, and I'll let you know when that's going to be. And as for the nasty earthquakes, terremotos, as they are called in Spanish, or tremblores, I can definitely relate to these poor folks. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, and I've lived through all of the major earthquakes in my lifetime over there in LA. The last one was the Northridge quake, and the epicenter of that quake was like a quarter of a mile from my house in the San Fernando Valley. It was a 6.8 on the Richter scale. And I'm telling you, the aftershocks are what really keep you up at night. They can be pretty frightening. Interestingly enough, Tuesday's quake occurred on the 32nd anniversary of the 1985 Mexico City earthquake, which killed about 10,000 people, and which was, by the way, commemorated with a national earthquake drill at 11 a.m. local time, 2 hours before the earthquake struck on Tuesday. It's kind of weird, don't you think? Okay, I am planning a meet and greet in Puerto Vallarta for Tuesday, October the 17th at JR's meeting place at Kelly's Por Favor Saloon and Cookhouse. JR doesn't know this yet. Maybe he'll be listening and he'll find out, but I'm going to bring my microphones with me again, and I'm going to have all of you people who are there tell me about what you're doing in paradise. And if you have a business and you want to make a pitch to my audience, you're more than welcome to come on in. We did that last time. And anyway, I just have to lock down my airfare. And of course, I better tell my wife what I'm planning on doing. Okay. Yeah, that would be best. Okay. I'll see you guys there, all right? Cool. Okay. Let's get to our guests and let's get to the show. Reggie and Donna Ballou, okay? Now, I got to say that my most popular podcast episodes are the ones with you listeners telling your stories and giving your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. So I'm pretty sure that you're going to like my two guests here. I love their accents, but hey, I'm from California. We have no accents in California. At least that's what I've been told. Anyway, Reggie gave me a good review on iTunes, and after I mentioned him in one of my podcasts and read his review, he followed up with an email, and it went kind of like this. My first visit to Puerto Vallarta was May of 1989. I was 20 years old, and I had only 2 semesters of Spanish language classes in my then young lifetime. A college buddy and myself drove over 2,000 miles one way from Florence, Alabama to Puerto Vallarta. It took 4 days, and we only stayed a week, but oh my, how that changed my life. In 1990, I studied at the University of Guadalajara. I was able to visit Puerto Vallarta 3 times that year, and I traveled around Jalisco, including trips to Barra de Navidad, Ameca and Tequila that summer. And he also writes that he met JR on his last trip down. Okay, so I had to have Reggie on the show because his experiences of going to school in Guadalajara mirrored my own college Spanish experiences as well. When I was going to San Diego State University in 1978, I was given the opportunity to take a 6-week course in Mexico City, and I would get a semester's college credit in Spanish for taking that 6-week course. So naturally, I took advantage of that. It was a wonderful experience, and there's just so many stories that I can tell from those 6 weeks in Mexico City. I was totally immersed in the language, and we lived with a Mexican family, and I went to class every day at 9 o'clock with my roommate. We'd get up and walk on down to school. And the Americans, the college student, we were all college students, of course. We were learning Spanish upstairs, and the Mexicans were learning English downstairs. And then at noon, when we got out of class, we all dispersed and went our own ways. I usually, went off with some hot Latina and her friend, and of course her brother or her uncle or something like that. But I would take off and go do stuff and get just totally immersed in the culture and in the language. And by the time the 6 weeks were up, you guys, I was dreaming in Spanish with English subtitles. No lie. Truly. It was an immersion to talk about, I'll tell you. So anyway, Reggie did the same thing, only his university had a deal with a place in Guadalajara. I got to tell you, those were the greatest times of my life. Anyway, let's get to Reggie and Donna and hear their stories. All right, and I have joining me today, Reggie and Donna, all the way from beautiful Tennessee. How you guys doing?
Good, and good morning to you, Barry. How are you doing today?
Oh, great. How you doing, Donna?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, you're shy. You're over there real shy. You know, chime in. So, Reggie, Donna, tell us a little bit about yourselves. Where are you from, and what do you do for a living?
We live in Manchester, Tennessee, which is a small rural town in Middle Tennessee. Uh, I work for a large telecommunications company in customer service. I'm in the call center, but I love my job and just celebrated 9 years with the company, which for me is a pretty decent length of time.
Hmm. Donna?
And I stay home. I'm a homemaker. I work a lot with jewelry and crafts, and recently have picked up the love of ceramics and painting. So yeah, that's
That's
what
what
I
you,
spend my days doing.
very nice. Yes. Well, I love jewelry making too, and I do that just to settle down and relax. So I'm with you. I'm with you, Donna. I like that too. Um, Reggie, I know that your experiences are a little different than Donna's are because when you wrote me, you told me that you traveled to Puerto Vallarta when you were 20 and you drove down there in a car. What was that like?
I was 20 years old and had 2 semesters of Spanish in my then young life. I didn't get to take Spanish in high school. My freshman year of college, I didn't take Spanish. So after I finished my sophomore year in those 2 semesters, a college buddy of mine and I jumped in the car and drove 4,000 miles round trip to Puerto Vallarta and back.
4,000 miles round trip.
Over, well, it took about 4 days to get there. We spent a week and about 4 days getting home. So roughly 2 weeks.
Wow. 2 weeks. Okay, so tell us about the ride. I mean, where did you start? Where did you originate?
We left Florence, Alabama, and drove to Houston, which was a long drive for me. As a young man, I had never been on the road that much, especially behind the wheel.
Uh-huh.
When we got up the following day, I found out that he could not drive a stick shift. So I was the sole driver in my little Mitsubishi. We crossed the border at Nuevo Laredo and spent our first night in Mexico in Monterrey, which was quite an interesting experience in itself.
What year was that, Reggie?
That was May of 1989.
Okay. All right. So 1989, and you were in Monterey. You spent the first night there, and you said that was kind of an experience. What happened in Monterey?
Well, once we got across the border, even though he had had just a very small amount of Spanish classes, I'd had my 1 year. We found we were pulling out the dictionary to get just basic directions, kind of a panic mode, looking up the word left, uh, trying to find a reasonably priced room. We found out real quick that even at that time, a nice hotel with English speaking concierge demanded a higher price. So we found a little place to stay. We went and ordered a hamburger, and we literally got a meat patty with ham on it, a hamburguesa.
I guess.
But we did get to
Go
we
ahead.
did get to enjoy a fun night in Monterey, which is a beautiful modern city by all means. Um, Next morning, hopped in the car, took off driving towards Mazatlan. That was no interstate, what they call autopista, no toll roads at that time.
Mm.
No driving at night.
Yeah. So what was it? What was that like?
Well, the one evening that it got up close to dark, I found out why they said not to drive at night. There was cattle free roaming, and I'll never forget the experience of the headlights hitting this herd of cattle right in the middle of the road and locking up the brakes, and like a bad cartoon, the car sliding right up to within just inches of the cattle, it seemed like.
Oh wow. So time to stop, time to pull off and find a place, huh?
Right. There was times where the brakes were squeaking and we'd pull up to the little BMX station and I get the water hose and just soak down the front brakes. And then a lot of the gas stations at that time only had leaded gas still. even in 1989, you couldn't find unleaded gas. So they'd take a coat hanger and use that to maneuver the larger than it should have been gas nozzle up to the gas filler and pump that leaded gas into my little Mitsubishi, which was only supposed to have unleaded gas.
How did that do with your engine there? Okay.
Literally on the way home, part of the muffler fell off, so we had a noisy little four-cylinder.
All right. So you got to Mazatlan, and then what happened?
Woke up and I saw the Pacific coast for the first time on the day that we arrived in Puerto Vallarta. So getting to see early morning, the waves crashing in on the Pacific coast of Mexico. We drove down into Puerto Vallarta and found Hotel Posada de Roger, which I couldn't say enough about. I actually pulled up on Basilio Badillo and parked in front of the little stay there, the little Posada de Roger, and didn't move the car for a week. Nowadays, you could barely get a parking spot, and it's mostly valet. And at that time, the car sat there and got dusty over a week's time.
Wow. All right. Yes, I remember that hotel back in the day. All right. So tell us about the accommodations at the Hotel Posada de Roger.
It was a really affordable stay. I had my Frommer's Mexico on $49 a day book, which I think it's funny because Gil Givens did his book, Mexico on 49 brain cells a day, which probably describes somebody trying to get by on $49 a day then. But we were able to get a nice, clean room. The folks there were incredible. They had the coconut trees in the lobby growing, so you'd see somebody on a ladder up there with a machete knocking the coconuts out of the tree. Just an undescribably incredible experience.
Wow. Okay. So, and then the ride on the way home, other than losing your muffler, was that pretty uneventful?
We tried to get a more direct route home, and of course, we just had an old Rand McNally Atlas. So we took off through the country, and I know we went home through Guadalajara because, again, the largest city by far I had ever driven through. A lot different even than driving through Houston because Houston had the interstates. But we maneuvered our way through Guadalajara north to the border and got home relatively uneventful, but with rolls of film and memories that there's not $1 million would take away.
So that first trip, what did you guys do?
Well, I had heard of Carlos O'Brien's, and I found myself spending more time in Carlos O'Brien's than anywhere else, besides out taking pictures and exploring. But being a young man, I honestly did not know that the drinking age was 18 or whatever. So for the first time in my life, I was able to legally go to a bar and enjoy myself at 20 years old.
Okay, so that's what happened to you, Reggie. You went into a bar, you disappeared, and then that was that. Very, very good.
And it was not planned. It wasn't planned. It was totally by accident. I didn't realize. And lots of friendly Canadian young ladies.
Yeah, okay. There you go. All right. So that was your first trip to Puerto Vallarta. When did you return after that?
I went back the following spring break. Me and 3 other guys drove again from Florence, Alabama, and one of them had attended the University of Guadalajara, so we actually stopped and visited the family he had stayed with. And kind of an interesting trip, they wanted to go to Barra de Navidad. Well, when we got to Barra, I was like, we're so close to Puerto Vallarta for me not to take the bus back up there.
Sure.
And so I went back that March of 1990, relived some of my same antics in Puerto Vallarta. When I got the bus back to Barra, they were literally packing up to leave. So I was told that I almost got left in Mexico, which looking back may not have been such a bad thing, but it was certainly been unexpected.
That might have changed your life for sure, Reggie, leaving you there. All right. So Guadalajara, did you end up, I see that you went to school there?
Yeah, I returned that following June after I was there for spring break in March, I returned with a group of students from the university I was attending in Alabama, and we studied. I got 6 semester hours credit for studying at the University of Guadalajara that summer of 1990. We got to travel as a group from the university, and then I traveled by myself to Puerto Vallarta, to Barra de Navidad, to Tequila, and around the state of Jalisco. One of my favorite events was the fireworks the Lake Chapala area had. There was a U.S. Veterans of Foreign Wars post that did 4th of July fireworks, and those folks in Chapala and Ajijic really knew how to live it up for the 4th of July holiday.
They know how to do it. Okay, you guys. So, if you're all those expats are enjoying the 4th of July up there in Lake Chapala. So how'd you like Lake Chapala?
The most interesting thing about Chapala is they call it Glorieta Chapala sometimes because so much water has been drained from the lake. You could almost get out in the dry banks of the lake and drive around it. But beautiful place, horses free roaming the streets, beautiful houses, and plenty of English speaking gringos and gringas. So you can go in and sit down and have a real hamburger and talk to somebody from the United States or Canada and rewind for a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. When was your next visit?
I went back a couple more times in the early 90s, and then Donna and I returned in March of this year for a short 8-day stay.
All right. Well, some people would consider 8 days a long stay. So, Donna, this is your chance. You've been so quiet up till now. So this was your first visit to Puerto Vallarta. Was it your first visit to Mexico too?
Yes, it was my first time out of the country.
Oh wow! Okay, so this is a big trip for you. Tell us about your time in Puerto Vallarta.
It was a big adventure. Reggie had been talking about it for the last 15 years that we've been married, and we kept planning trips, and finally this year we were able to have everything planned out and go ahead and go down. And it's just more than what you can't put into words, like all the things to see and do, and the local culture, and getting out and mingling and talking with all the locals and stuff. It was amazing. And the first sunset, the sunsets are going to be etched in my mind forever because there's nothing as beautiful, and no two are even close in color. And one of the nights we were there, the place that we stayed, we had like a open arches in the wall looking out over like the ocean, and the sunset, like just lay in bed and look up at, or the moon rather, the moon was full while we were there, so being able to lay in bed and look up at the full moon was just amazing.
Wow. Yeah, the sunsets in Puerto Vallarta are so beautiful. And so tell us about where you stayed. You had a nice view, it sounds like.
Casa de los Arcos is number 1 on TripAdvisor for specialty lodging. Susan Wiseman has 4 villas that she rents out, and we were in Casa Grande. Just so happens the only thing she had available for the time we were there was a 2-bedroom. It's about 2,000 square foot.
Wow.
About 1/3 of that is an outside balcony, but I'm still going to count that in the entertaining space. A wonderful view overlooking the bay. Up above the old Vista Grill location and a block above Casa Isabel.
Oh, okay. So way up on the hill. Very neat, very nifty. Was it air conditioned?
We did not have air conditioning, but while we were there, the temperatures at home got down into the high 20s, low 30s, and we slept with the doors open with a comfortable 68 degrees at night. So for early March, the temperatures at home were unseasonably cool, and still we were able to sleep comfortably. Even a lot of nights with the ceiling fan on, it was that comfortable.
Yeah. Well, you were there during a time of year where it's pretty optimum weather in Puerto Vallarta in March, so that's Yeah, I love it. I love it in March. Um, so tell us about now. Was there food served at this place? What was the name of it again, Reggie?
Casa de los Arcos. She only has four villas, and we were in the larger of the four. But to be number one in specialty lodging on TripAdvisor, I think, is a really special treat,
Yeah.
and she's very much earned it. But we had to walk down, or we even took a taxi down the hill to the romantic zone to eat and entertain ourselves. The one meal we had where we were able to walk home after enjoying a good night was at Casa Isabel, which was an interesting night in itself.
So Casa Isabel, tell everybody about the yellow house on the hill.
Well, we had been to JR's meet and greet that evening, and he encouraged us to seek out Isabel. So when we got there without reservations, I can't tell you exactly how, but we managed to swing a table. We didn't get to meet Isabel on this trip, but definitely want to meet her in the future. But the food was incredible. The live mariachi band was incredible. And an interesting array of patrons that evening.
Yeah, there is an eclectic crowd at Casa Isabel, that's for sure. All right, so you from that villa up on the hill, do you mind telling me how much that was per night to stay up there?
Her regular rate is $2.99 a night. We were able to swing a little bit better deal because there was only two of us. She has the cats and the puppy dog running around. They are pet friendly. So, again, big kudos to her for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just depending on the time of year and whether she's booked or not, which we were in Casa Grande just because that was the only thing that was available. Might be some negotiating, but it's worth every penny. If you've got a larger group, it's worth every penny.
How many did that sleep?
There was two full bedrooms and two full baths, but they had a large living area where a couple of more could sleep comfortably on the sectional in there. So four adults would be the standard, but you could throw a couple more in there, no problem.
Okay, cool. So like if you were going with a couple, you could split that cost and you'd end up in a place where you wouldn't bump into each other because it's 2,000 square feet, right?
Oh, yeah, it's huge. A full kitchen, a huge living area, a large dining area, and then the outside patio, which is exclusive to that particular villa, is great.
All right, so keep that in mind, you guys. Listen to this, right? If you're going to an all-inclusive and you're going to be staying at a place that's going to cost you at least a couple $100 for a couple, you can split. You can split the cost of this with another couple if you're going down, or even if you're not, it's still very reasonable. And you got your own villa, you guys. You got your own villa, right?
You got it.
Okay, so keep that in mind, you guys. We'll get information. Is that okay, Reggie? You got information from that place?
Casa de los Arcos .com. Susan Wiseman. Incredible. Been in Puerto Vallarta for 25 or so years. Her husband David's there. Just an incredible couple. And looking at TripAdvisor, you'll see every review is a 5-star perfect review.
Yeah. All right, you guys. So keep that in mind. We'll have information for that on the blog post for this episode. So check it out. What did you guys eat? Where'd you guys go? What'd you like?
Well, we have our favorites for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I can't say enough about Freddy's Toucan. I know when Gary Beck did his episode early on, he talked about Freddy's Toucan, and I couldn't agree with him more. Best breakfast by far, in my opinion, in Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
And affordable.
Yeah, it is affordable. It's very affordable. You see a lot of locals eating there too.
Freddie's family runs Hotel Posada de Roger, his sister now, but it was special to me because he was there as a younger man when I was there in 1989. And so even though I didn't specifically recognize Freddie, he's there at the door greeting you, and he's been there for 30 plus years with his family running the hotel there.
Yeah, his
place
family.
that I stayed on my first trip.
He's got family that live about 5 miles from me here over in my neck of the woods. We've talked about that.
So we jumped to lunch. The botanical garden, which I would encourage everyone to sign the petition that's out right now. And it looks like there's a lot of names been added to it, but the botanical garden for lunch was one of the best meals we had. Can't say enough about that place. And then looking last night on TripAdvisor, Ocean Grill, it looks like is coming back on November 1st, potentially. Probably the best meal that we had, at least for lunch, while we were in Mexico.
Wow. Okay. So you tried the Ocean Grill, you took the boat ride, and did the whole 9 yards.
That was just an incredible experience. And the little puppy dog, I understand, is going to be returning this fall when they reopen.
Did you
I
say
wish I could
you
think
said
of his
little?
name.
You said little puppy dog, didn't you?
He's not so little. Wilson is I think he's a boxer, but he's a nice, big, sweet, friendly dog that they don't like you to feed.
Yeah, I believe that. Well, I understand completely. I don't like people feed my dog either. But
At your suggestion, it had come up at some point. The first night that we were there, we went to Langostino's and had the little, what they refer to as lobsters. It's not on the menu, but they serve 10 Langostinos on a plank that have been grilled perfectly. So definitely would recommend Langostinos. And then our final meal was the Vista Grill on the beach the night before we flew home, and probably the most romantic meal that anyone could ever have, sitting on the beach at the Vista Grill on the beach.
wow, yeah, Vista Grill is a nice place. Well, do you agree, Donna? Was it romantic?
Oh yeah, we were sitting in the sand watching the sunset, and they brought out drinks and just to try the different local cuisines. Reggie tried octopus for the first time that night, but yeah, the food there was incredible.
Yeah.
And not to mention the views and just being out where, everybody was out and just watching the sunset together, and it's a different experience.
It's a big kumbaya moment out there when the sun sets, isn't it?
Yeah, not to mention one of our things, the first day that we got there, they had a little mariachi group, and Reggie had asked them to play a song for us. So throughout our trip, 4 different times, we were able to see a little group and grabbed them over to sing to us. And that's just another one of those memories that you just can never replace or relive. But just to have somebody come up table side and just sing their hearts out, it's just, an experience that I had never experienced before, and look forward to it in our upcoming trips as well.
You hear that, you guys? Girls like to be sung to. So don't send away the mariachis. Let them play. Reggie, you're so romantic, dude. You're good. You are so good.
Cielito Lindo was the song, and that touched me when I was in Guadalajara at Plaza de Mariachis. And so Cielito Lindo was the song that she's referring to.
Yes, Cielito Lindo. So, wonderful. And tell us how expensive it was to pay a band of mariachis to sing for you.
It was all tip based, really. It was 3 or 4 guys that would come up, and then we tipped them what we felt like was a pretty good amount, especially where they'd let you take pictures and record. So we made sure that we looked over the tipping and what was customary for different services or whatever. So we definitely made sure that we took good care of them for taking good care of us.
Good for you. All right. So you're not going to be precise. You're not going to tell me. You're just beating around the bush.
Maybe $10. It was very reasonable.
Okay.
And still wanted to feel like we were being generous, but I had literally taken note cards and had her jot down some little tips and hints ahead of time. So not having my note cards in front of me, it's hard to say.
That's okay. All right. Just want to know. I just want to, get everybody ready. Get everybody ready for, what to expect and not to underpay and, all that other good stuff. So that's good. That's good info. What about the nightlife?
I have to mention one thing.
Oh, yeah, go.
Oh, you just asked what I was fixing to say. I have to mention, and I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but quotes and cuetes.
Cuetes y cuetes, yeah.
After having heard you talk about the webcam and the atmosphere there, we spent 4 or 5 evenings watching the sunset there, enjoying their happy hour.
Yeah, I love Cuetes y cuetes, and it's good to go there and support them because they have that webcam. And Langostinos also has the webcam, which is pretty cool too. So both of those places. So yeah, you know what I like over at Cuetes y cuetes is their tortilla soup is fantastic. It's crazy good.
We discovered a chorizo and cheese dip that was just incredible. So we could have nachos with chorizo and cheese, and they would bring out for happy hour, buy one, get one free, your first margarita in a nice glass and the second one in a little plastic cup. So the buy one you get in your regular glass, the get one free came out in a little plastic cup, but that's okay. It all tastes the same.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. 2 for 1. 2 for 1 margaritas, happy hour. This is the way it should be in Mexico. And it is that way in a lot of places in Mexico, everybody. In fact, I think JR has a list of happy hours on his website, if I'm not mistaken. If he does, I'll put a link to it in my podcast here. So as far as, did you get out and go dancing or anything like that?
We spent a lot of time on the Malecon, people watching. Everybody says Sunday night's the night to get out, but we found, especially at the arches, every evening, later in the evening, there would be something going on at the arches, whether it's the mime or the magician. So the nightlife for us consisted of exploring the Malecon as much as anything.
Yeah, it's a not to miss, you guys. Make sure that that's one of the things you all do. So speaking of that, what would you say would be one of the things that a visitor shouldn't miss when they come to Puerto Vallarta?
Oh my, that's a hard question to answer in that there's so many different things, but especially a big hand goes out to Jaime, the mouse painter. During the day, during the week, Jaime, who has 2 degrees in law, but unfortunately has no use of either hand. He uses his feet for a lot of things, but he paints with his mouth. So right at the arches across from the city plaza, if you ever get a chance to interview him, I think it'd be incredible. But Jaime is his name. He paints with his mouth, and just an incredible artist and a wonderfully intelligent bilingual artist who will tell you about how he studied law at the University of Guadalajara but became bored with it and decided to paint instead.
Wow. All right. You bet I'm going to interview that guy. Thanks for the tip. I appreciate that, Reggie.
We learned about him because the city offers, it actually starts at the plaza and it's free. The city tourism office offers a walking tour. It's a long tour. It's about 4 hours. They have one in the morning that goes north of town. They have one in the afternoons that goes south of town. We just did the one south of town, but it turns out our tour guide was a student with Jaime at the local school in Puerto Vallarta. And so he introduced us at the beginning of the tour, but I couldn't stress enough the free walking tour the city of Puerto Vallarta does is something that everyone can experience for free. Wow. Kind of similar to Gary Thompson's statue walking tour, which we did also, and you did a wonderful podcast with those folks, but this one gets out into more areas around the city.
Okay, cool. So how do you find that city walking tour?
We have found it looking on TripAdvisor, but the city plaza has where the mayor's office is, where you can go into the large courtyard area. This is right on the corner. Well, basically right beside where the gazebo is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's where you all meet up, and that's where it starts.
It starts there. They get everybody signed in. That day they took a picture of us. We had a medium-sized group, and then you take off on foot exploring around the south side of town, and it's absolutely free.
Interesting, great. Well, I imagine that they do ask you to tip your tourist guide. Yes.
Yeah, we gave him a generous tip. He was a philosophy professor in Puerto Vallarta. I don't know if it was a high school level, but he had studied at the University of Guadalajara, so we kind of bonded over the fact that I had attended there also. An incredible tour guide and a very wise person that he's an instructor of philosophy.
It's amazing the people that you'll meet who are tour guides. They are so well trained. To be a tour guide, you guys, you have to have proper training, and these guys, they know their stuff. Anybody asks them a question, they know it.
Yeah, Julian, what is his name? I had to remember his name, and I couldn't say enough wonderful things about Julian, but he took us down and showed us the mosaic wall and up to the cathedral. One thing worth mentioning, at the cathedral, they do tours up to the bell tower. We didn't take advantage of it, but the gentleman who's selling the rosary beads to raise money for the cathedral will arrange for a tour up to the bells at the top of the cathedral.
Okay, wow. Did you hear that, you guys? All right, so look for the guy counting his rosaries over there, and see if he can get you in for a small fee. You can get a once in a lifetime tour of the bell tower at the Nuestra Iglesia de Señora de Guadalupe. Very cool. Very cool. So, any other cool advice you can give us, Reggie? So far, you're a fount of info.
I could go on all day, but I think especially for first time visitors, and I may be getting ahead of myself, but printing out JR's maps and getting out on the streets and exploring, or get on a bus and explore, but especially print out JR's maps ahead of time and just take off and wander around the Quali Island, the Rio Quali Island, and what they call the Children's Island. If you go down to the end, there's the steps that lead up to the Gringo Gulch. Was a particularly fascinating thing for us. The street art, the murals, like what Adrian does. I loved the interview with him, and then when I saw the pictures, I actually recognized we had found some of his murals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a great guy. So
I know Donna's got some tips for first timers too.
All right, Donna, come on. This was your first time, so first of all, did you notice any trouble, language barriers, anything like that?
I was worried because Reggie, of course, he had been studying and refreshing, and I only took a semester of Spanish my 9th grade year in high school. So like as it was getting closer and closer, 3 months out, 2 months out, he kept telling me, you need to study. And so when we got there, I really hadn't done a whole lot of studying. He and I both would do like Duolingo on our phone on the application. But the language barrier, like on the plane on the way there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get off this plane and I'm not going to know what anybody's saying. But there really wasn't as big of a language barrier as I thought there was going to be. I found my biggest barrier was like knowing numbers and prices for stuff, as crazy as that may sound. Because of course in the markets, when you ask them how much something is, they'll tell you, but of course nothing's set in stone. So everything's negotiable, which, we learned really quickly that, somebody knows what their bottom dollar is, and, everything's up for negotiation basically. But Reggie was my savior because I could, he would translate for me, I guess. But we came back with some really good deals on some stuff. But the language barrier, I'd have to say, if I went by myself, I probably would have a little bit of a struggle. But I feel like for the most part, even the little children that you run into walking, up and down the Malecon selling their little clay-made keychains and their little necklaces, they know enough English to be able to communicate with you. And then even the things they say in Spanish are like the simple, like hola or gracias or things like that are just, pretty standard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you would say, don't worry, if you don't speak Spanish, it's okay. Come on down.
It really is. It truly is. And then believe it or not, there are some places where you might be in a local restaurant and they'd rather that you spoke in English than trying to, communicate with them in Spanish. It's just, you just never knew from place to place what you were going to be up against. But I myself found that the language barrier was truly not a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, that's, there are a lot of people that speak English there. A lot of people in the shops speak English. Many of the restaurants, English is spoken there. And many of the menus are in English and Spanish. So you guys, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid if you don't speak Spanish. I always tell everybody to learn how to count in Spanish. Not a bad idea to learn how to count to 100, right? Because, then you can maybe understand a little bit what they're talking about. But still, you don't need it. You don't need it to be in Puerto Vallarta. What else, Donna? What else did you find about Puerto Vallarta?
That you really need to make sure that you take good walking shoes. I mean, I was prepared, but when you get off the plane and you're going from, Tennessee to Mexico, you got your cute little sandals on and you get there and realize that the cobblestone roads are a little rough on your feet. When we first got there, we were invited by the property owner, Susan, and her husband to come up and watch the sunset from their balcony, which is the highest point on their property, and have some margaritas and some homemade salsa and guacamole with them. And Reggie and I were like, okay, we've got, about an hour and a half, let's go explore. And I wasn't even thinking and set off down this hill without having changed my shoes. And when we get back up to the property, David and Susan both kind of laughed when they'd heard that we walked down the hill, but not only did we walk down the hill, we walked back up it, which is something they had never done.
Oh, man, that is a hill. That is a hill, you guys.
Yeah. So, but I'd say the walking shoes and definitely the sunscreen, because you don't want to get down there and get sunburned and then just ruin, a 7 or 8 day trip because you're hurting so bad and you have the side effects of sunburn and you're just uncomfortable. To thoroughly be able to enjoy yourself, you need to be well to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So sunscreen for sure. Taxi rides are cheap. So up and down those hills, if I'm going down a hill, it's okay. But if I got to go up a hill, I'm looking for a cab.
Yeah, this hill, it's one of those hidden hills, I guess you could say, because it doesn't seem so bad going down because you're going around the curves. Mm-hmm. But going back up, it was a climb.
Yeah. Well,
and we only walked it back up that one day.
Yeah. Do it once and that will teach you a lesson.
Was enough.
That's right. Lesson learned.
Yes.
But thankfully taxis were $2, $3, depending on where you were coming from. So they were remarkably, and of course we would negotiate ahead of time how much it was going to be. But if I could get a taxi for $3 or less, that was never a problem.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd suggest too that was Reggie's idea prior to leaving was where we were off the Malecon, up a little ways. We printed our hotel's location in map view, and also on the back had the actual address and laminated it to protect it had it have rained or gotten wet. But for the taxi rides, just to be certain, we could show them the map and the address instead of them thinking that they knew what we were saying, where we were trying to get to every night. It was a big help because 9 times out of 10, the drivers were like, oh yeah, I know right where that is. So with so many names being similar and addresses being similar, it was a real save for us to have had that little, laminated card that got us home safe every night.
What a great idea. So if you're not staying at a hotel which is easily recognized and has an easily recognizable name, folks, Donna's got a great plan, right? So you just get yourself Google Maps, print it out, laminate it, mark it, and you can show it to the taxi drivers who really don't know. You tell them what the streets are, and they don't know the streets. You have to kind of tell them like where it's kind of at, And
Yeah, not to mention like with ours, it had Los Arcos in it, and there's so many places
oh
that
yeah,
have that because it's a common, name around there. So I really feel like it was our savior and getting back and forth whenever we needed to.
great tip. Absolutely. Got any other great tips for us there, Donna?
Um, Me, I'm a people person, so like I would say, don't be scared to try to communicate. You'll know like right off whether or not someone is able to communicate in your language or not, or whether or not it's, broken up enough to where you can understand. We met a couple of people there that, every trip back we will go and seek them out, and, they call us their brothers, they call us their sisters, and just don't let the different areas, like, I mean, at first when we got there, it was like you didn't know where you should go, where you shouldn't go, but we never found ourselves any place where we felt like we were scared or we shouldn't be there, or, just there wasn't ever any hesitation with us to really intermingle with the locals there. I meant from the markets to, passing people by and walking on the streets or through the parks. We just really reached out to every face we saw and made sure that we said hello.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good way to meet people too.
Yeah, and not only that, but to find out about other things to do that maybe, other people may not get to experience because they didn't have that interaction.
Exactly. Exactly. What kind of advice would you give to a first-time visitor to Puerto Vallarta?
I think, like she said, having the good walking shoes, like I mentioned, print out JR's maps, get out and explore, go to an ATM, preferably somewhere that's where you walk inside, withdraw your pesos off of your debit card, and use the local currency to really experience where we spent all of our time, literally 100% of our time in the romantic zone. We did not go to the marina. We did not go to Nuevo Vallarta. We needed pesos, and so go and withdraw the pesos, explore, and have fun.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Very good. Very good. What are your future plans? You going to head back to Puerto Vallarta anytime soon?
We're planning on spending at least 2 weeks next April, which seems like a lifetime away, but to be able to get the time off work, to be able to enjoy the time we want there, it'll be next spring. Sylvie, with Power Walk the Streets of Puerto Vallarta, has a hike up to the cross that we really want to do. I know you had just posted asking about the road to San Sebastian del Oeste. We definitely want to travel up to is it Montebello Italian
Yeah,
restaurant?
Montebello. Yep. Yep.
So that's definitely in our plans. Um, well, Donna and I both are rock hounds, so we'd like to travel to Magdalena to shop for fire opals,
Mm.
to find some rough material to bring home and work with. Um, like we mentioned, I'd like to be able to go up and do the tour of the bells at the cathedral.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd like to do
And
that too.
then I'm going to put out a call for help. We didn't get to Yalapa, and I want to go back to Yalapa. I'd like to get up early in the morning and get maybe a charter boat. And then I need a tour guide. I need someone local who has some experience in Yalapa that'd be willing to, and we'd compensate them with food or drinks or whatever we could to get them to go along with us. But we need a tour guide to go back to Yalapa next year and spend a day exploring.
Yeah, that sounds like fun. That shouldn't be too tough to find somebody to help you with that. Um, hmm. Well, have I missed anything? Is there anything you want to add?
There's two places that I have to mention. Gil Givens, who is just an incredible author and a comic, and his wife Lucy own Lucy's Cuckoo Cabana on Basilio Badillo, and they travel during the summertime, like right now, around the entire country, purchasing different wares to sell in their small shop. So I feel like anyone that's visiting should go by Lucy's Cuckoo Cabana and shop for their last minute souvenirs to take home, wonderful quality stuff at a good value. And the happiest moment I had while I was in Mexico was being able to take Donna to Sergio Bustamante's gallery and buy her a handmade pendant. He's the artist that did the In Search of Reason, the ladder that everyone climbs up on and takes their picture with mom encouraging the two kids to go off and explore the world at the top of the ladder. But he's got a gallery. I discovered him on my first trip in May of 1989 and have followed his work for 28 years. And so visiting Sergio Bustamante's gallery down close to the cathedral is something I'd encourage anyone to do.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. How about you, Donna?
Yeah, I guess I would say like the shopping at the local markets and really, the Lucy's that he mentioned. I think it was 3 different times we went in there, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a small shop, but like every time we walked in, we made purchases because like there was something we didn't see the day before. And of course, everything there was local art where Lucy and her husband traveled and hand-picked these pieces to bring back to their stores to sell. So like, when we have our shelf with all of our Mexico souvenirs over here, we've got plates that were hand-painted and, the little brass nativity set that someone had, hammered out. And it's just amazing to know the heart and soul that went into these pieces, especially with Reggie and I ourselves being jewelry makers and lovers of different crafts and arts and things, just knowing where it came from and that, it's like one of a kind. And the same with Sergio's art, like the pendant that I got, there's one of them. There's not another that's going to be exactly the same. There's going to be little, differences in each piece that he makes, and knowing that we own these things, and it just feels like we brought Mexico home with us.
Yeah, definitely. And as jewelry fans and jewelry making people, the work and everything that goes into making these beautiful pieces of jewelry that you find. Well, I guess that we're all finished up here. I mean, I can't believe it. We've had a great discussion here. I just want to thank you guys very much for reaching out and sending me that email, Reggie. And you even, I hear a kitty over there. It sounds like you got a visitor in your room there. All right.
You got us.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's all right. We're all animal lovers here. I just want to thank you very much for coming on the show and taking the time and talking to my listeners. And maybe one day we'll meet in Puerto Vallarta.
Barry, thank you for having us on. And yes, we will meet in paradise. We're going to sit down and talk about the jewelry business one day, maybe.
Okay. Well, you'll pick my brain too. I see. Okay. Well, all right, everybody. Reggie, Donna, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Barry.
All right. Now, they had some really great suggestions, didn't they? That idea of laminating a map and the directions to your hotel or your condo, it's absolutely brilliant, you guys. Also, the free city tour, I didn't know that they had it. So, gosh, take it. Check it out. And for sure, if you get a chance, splurge and treat yourself to a serenade, okay? Get the banda together and have them sing you something, a little cielito lindo, something like that, okay? Who knows? Maybe you'll get lucky, right? Okay, now there were a couple of great ideas that they had, but I'm going to leave those for you to find when you go to my show notes for this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. And don't forget, while you're on that page, to check out my webcam page. Check out what the weather's like and what the people are wearing in Puerto Vallarta in real time. You can even catch a sunset if you time things out right. So just go to my website, click on the webcam page, and see what I'm talking about. Also, don't forget my Malibu to PV real estate page, where I have homes for sale in Puerto Vallarta, as well as homes north of the border in my neck of the woods in Malibu, California. Those multi-million-dollar homes that are owned by, I don't know, like producers and directors and, movie stars. Yeah, that page. Anyway, check it out. You'll be glad you did. Okay, well, that should do it for this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. Next week, stay tuned for more on-the-ground reports from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with travel tips, great restaurant and excursion ideas, and more. But until then, remember, this is an interactive show where I depend on your questions and your suggestions about all things Puerto Vallarta. If you think of something that I should be talking about, please reach out to me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off your message like Reggie did. And remember, if you're considering booking any type of tour while you're in Puerto Vallarta, you must go to vallartainfo.com, that's JR's website, and reserve your tour through him right from his website. Remember, this is a value-for-value proposition, my friends. His experience and on-the-ground knowledge of everything Puerto Vallarta in exchange for your making a purchase of a tour that you do anyway. You're just doing it through him as a way of saying thank you. Thanks, JR, for being our guide. It costs no more than if you were going to use someone else to do it, so really just do it. And when you do take one of those tours, email me about your experiences. Maybe you can come on board and share with others what you liked or didn't like about the tour. Again, contact me by clicking on the Contact Us tab and sending off a message. And once again, if you like this podcast, please take the time and subscribe and give me a good review on iTunes if you would. That way we can get the word out to more and more people about the magic of this place, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And remember, I made it easy for you guys to do just that with each episode that I create. But if you haven't been to my website, you really need to have a look there. I have links to all the places that we talk about. I've got pictures and even more, all right there in my blog posts, in the show notes for each episode of the show. So check them out for sure if you haven't already done that, okay? All right. So thanks again to my buddies Reggie and Donna for coming on the show. I have pictures from them in my show notes as well. And also, I want to thank all of you for listening all the way through this episode of the Puerto Vallarta Travel Show. This is Barry Kessler, signing off with a wish for all of you to slow down, be kind, and live the Vallarta lifestyle. Nos vemos, amigos.
Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar. Samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar. Solo camino, perno por la playa, me encuentro junto al río, cuando todo está en calma, pronto cae la noche, brillas Puerto Vallarta, samba de Puerto Vallarta, noche de arrullo en el mar, de Puerto Vallarta, noche de amor junto al mar, samba de Puerto Vallarta.